Welcome to A Woman's Work, where we'll be exploring ways to go from surviving to thriving while balancing all the demands of womanhood in today's society. Happy Sunday, y'all. I hope you guys are having a great weekend. This is your host, Samara James, coming to you to share once again from my heart to yours. Today is Body Basics Sunday, and on Body Basics Sunday, I like to focus on ways that we can optimize our physical health to help assist with all the other areas of our lives. If our ship isn't functioning properly, then it's hard to take care of all the things that we need to take care of as women. On today's show, I'm going to focus on a topic that lots of women are familiar with, but very few talk about, at least in my experience, and that's fibroids. So I've dealt with fibroids basically since my first daughter was born, or my first child was born, my daughter, 9 years ago. That's when I found out I had them for the first time, and they've been kind of a nuisance ever since. And as I get older and after I had a second child, the fibroids got larger during that pregnancy and they've just become more of a nuisance. So I've had to figure out ways to manage the symptoms that come along with having fibroids. If any of you who are listening have looked into alternative health, you may have come across, especially if you're dealing with fibroids, lots of people who talk about how they shrank their fibroids, got rid of them completely through changing their diet and their habits. Fibroids are one of the easier things to manage with diet and changing habits. You can basically shrink them in a very short period of time, anywhere from 1 to 3 months, by removing things like dairy, meat that contains hormones, sugars, and the usual suspects that interfere with our health. There's also an emotional aspect that comes with fibroids. If you are dealing with a lot of high stress things in your life that can contribute to the size, fibroids can become inflamed due to stress. Also, a lot of the beauty products that we use contain things like parabens that can impact human cells and hormonal functions. So just by eliminating a lot of those things, you can get rid of fibroids. But if you're like me and you have a hard time changing habits, or if you're like most people, then maybe you haven't been able to master those types of changes in lifestyle yet. So in this episode, I'm going to tell you guys how even with all my cheating, I've reduced my intake of things like dairy and sugar, but I haven't totally eliminated them yet. And so I'm still dealing with the fibroids, but I've found some natural ways to manage the symptoms. So that's what this episode is going to be about. I hope that in, a few months, maybe 6 months or so, once I've gotten my routine established and once I've kind of developed better habits overall, or continue to develop better habits, I can tell you guys how I completely got rid of them. But that's not what this episode is about. This episode is about managing the symptoms. So for those of you who are not familiar with fibroids, by definition are non-cancerous tumors of the uterus, and they're found in over 80% of women. So although most of them are benign, about 97%, there is a malignancy rate of about 1 to 3%. But most of the women I know who are dealing with fibroids, they're benign. They're just a nuisance. If they get out of control, so some of the symptoms that come along with having fibroids, some women have no symptoms, and I didn't for a long time. But some of the symptoms that can come along with it are painful periods, really heavy bleeding, just localized pain around the fibroids. When I was pregnant with my son, I had some pretty large fibroids, and they cause a lot of pain at different points during the pregnancy. So they can become a nuisance. And when they get to that point, and if they cause lots of heavy bleeding, that becomes dangerous because you lose a lot of nutrients, then most doctors will recommend either a hysterectomy, or they have other procedures that can remove the fibroids without removing the uterus completely. The thing that happens with those, though, a lot of the time, and I don't have a percentage rate, I can probably look into that, is that because the root issue is not addressed, the fibroids return a lot of times, and people have to go back in for multiple surgeries. So a lot of the women that you'll see talking about how they finally got rid of their fibroids have already been through a surgery, and now they don't want to go through that again, and so they're making the lifestyle changes to get rid of the fibroids permanently. But like I said, the symptoms are just really annoying and they can affect your nutrient levels if you have lots of heavy bleeding. One of my favorite products for dealing with the symptoms associated with fibroids is called Slow Flow. So, Slow Flow is a combination of herbs that's used to support a healthy menstrual flow. So, if you're on the low side for whatever hormonal reason, or if you're on the heavy side due to fibroids, this combination of herbs kind of supports regulating your menstrual flow. And so, some of the featured ingredients are vitamin A and C. There's vitamin K. You know, babies get the vitamin K shot in the hospital to help with clotting because they don't have it in their system yet. So this herbal combination promotes clotting and can support a healthy menses if you're bleeding too heavily. And it also has yarrow, which is a really neat herb, and it actually can be used by itself instead of the Slow Flow. It's used for bleeding due to hemorrhages. You can put it on top of wounds. It basically slows down excessive blood flow. This herb combination also includes something called life root herb, which is a uterine tonic, and ginger, which is another uterine tonic to help the uterus kind of stay toned in the midst of having these fibroids interfering with its normal contractions during your menstrual cycle. I use this personally. I order it on Amazon, like I said, and it is amazing. I mean, within a few hours, it gets things back to normal. This was especially helpful right after I had my son and my period came back. It just slowed everything down and made it so that I could go about my daily life without having to worry about this nuisance due to these fibroids. Another thing that I use faithfully is chamomile tea for the pain that can be associated with having fibroids. I used to be a 3 ibuprofens every 4 hours type of girl. I mean, I was going through a bottle every month of ibuprofen. And those of you who have looked into it may know that ibuprofen contributes to leaky gut, which in turn contributes to autoimmune issues. And I didn't realize it. As a teenager, I was taking this ibuprofen all the time. And then I developed psoriasis, which is an autoimmune condition. I went back to ibuprofen during the pregnancy because I wasn't sure if I could have the chamomile. I was just kind of going back and forth. And it flared up the psoriasis once again. So I know it was contributing to some of the autoimmune issues that I have. But chamomile works just as effectively. As a matter of fact, I don't have to worry about treating the pain as often. If I just have a cup of chamomile in the morning and one at night, I'm good. And this is even with the increased pain and increased length of my menstrual cycle after the birth of my son. There are some great supplements if you're having heavy bleeding due to fibroids that help replenish those nutrients that you lose. Blackstrap molasses is one of my favorite ones. If you've got sugar issues like candida, or you're just limiting sugar for whatever reason, diabetes, that may not be the solution for you. But if you don't have any of those issues, just adding a little bit of blackstrap molasses to your breakfast, like your oatmeal or your smoothies, it's a great sweetener, is an easy way to replenish the iron that's lost when you have hemorrhaging due to fibroids. There's also another great supplement that I take. I took it during pregnancy, and it very quickly lifts your iron levels. It's called Mega Food Blood Builder, and it's excellent. It's not hard on the stomach. You can take it on an empty stomach. My doctor actually prescribed iron pills during my pregnancy because of low iron, and I took this instead, and it did the trick. Within a couple of weeks, when I had to go back and be tested again, it was great. And I had tried the prescription iron pills, and they really don't make you feel much better overall, and they can be really constipating, which creates a brand new issue. Another thing that I haven't tried that a lot of women have used to completely get rid of fibroids are castor oil packs. There are different types of castor oil that you could use. You can use the kind that you get at Whole Foods, the clear yellow castor oil. There's also black Jamaican castor oil. Both have been very effective from what I've seen in helping women to shrink and reduce the size of fibroids. I haven't tried this simply because I haven't made the time to just sit back with a castor oil pack on my belly for an hour, 4 days a week. But I plan on trying this in the future because because I haven't heard anyone say that it didn't help. And it's a really easy and inexpensive thing to do. You basically get some flannel or other type of absorbent material, and you soak it with the castor oil, place it on your abdomen, put a heating pad on top, and put some sort of plastic between the cloth and the heating pad. Most people just use trash bags or saran wrap. And you just lay for 20 minutes to an hour, no more than an hour, with the castor oil pack on your abdomen. This is not something that you can do if you're pregnant, if you're breastfeeding, if you're on your menstrual cycle. But, aside from that, it's a great practice to have. And it's just good for the body. It's good for your digestive system. Castor oil is really a miracle. I could do a whole episode on castor oil. Right now I'm using it on my hair, and I lost some of my hair due to hormonal changes during the pregnancy, and this is really helping to bring it back. So castor oil is another way to help deal with fibroids. That's all I have for today. Just some really practical advice to help those of you. There's so many of us who deal with this, and we deal with it in silence because we consider it something that's embarrassing. But with over 80% of women eventually coming across this issue, this is something that we should be talking about. And I just want you all to know that there are natural ways to handle this. If you go to your doctor and you explain to them the symptoms that you're having, understand that they're going to recommend surgery if you're saying that you can't deal with the fibroids. That's what you should expect when you go to a doctor. So I recommend that if you want to avoid surgery and if you want to get to the root of the issue, number one, make those dietary changes, getting rid of the hormones in your food and beauty products, reducing the sugar intake, getting rid of the dairy. All of those things will help. And in the meantime, as you're changing habits, use these herbs that I've talked about today. The slow flow or yarrow, which you can find at any health food store. The chamomile for pain. The supplements, the iron supplements to help replenish the nutrients that you use due to the heavy bleeding, and the castor oil packs to relax the body, improve the digestive system, which can be impacted by really large fibroids, and to reduce the size of the fibroids. If you guys have any questions about anything that I've said during this episode, please feel free to reach out to me at the website, highfrequencywoman.com. Leave your feedback. If you've got stories about how you found an amazing natural remedy for your fibroids, let me know. If you've got additional questions about anything that I've mentioned, let me know. I love to hear from you all. And if you like what you're hearing and you think that someone else could benefit, please leave a review and subscribe. The more people who leave reviews, the more people who subscribe, the more people can come across this information if they're looking for it. I'll talk to you guys soon. Have a wonderful week, and thank